In this video, I will demonstrate how easy it is to bring refrigerated sourdough starter back to life to produce massive oven spring in sourdough bread. Hi, I'm Ron, and thanks for clicking on this video. And if you're new here, please take a moment to click the subscribe button and notification bell, as well as check out the other videos on my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to activate sourdough starter that has been in my very cold fridge for the past 2 weeks. Then I'll demonstrate the easy to follow steps of making and baking sourdough bread. Okay then, let's begin. As a safety precaution, I like to keep some sourdough starter in 2 or 3 jars in case one of the jars breaks or the sourdough starter becomes contaminated, etc. I'll always have a backup. Here I'm helping my sourdough starter wake up by feeding the 20 grams of starter in the jar 10 grams of mixing flour and 10 grams of water. The mixing flour I use to feed my sourdough starter consists of 1/3 rye flour, 1/3 whole wheat flour, and 1/3 all-purpose flour. I keep it in this silver canister and in my fridge. One of the 2 jars of sourdough starter and the mixing flour go back into the fridge. The jar I fed yesterday sat on the kitchen counter overnight. Today I'm feeding it another 10 grams of water and 10 grams of mixing flour, bringing the total sourdough starter in the jar to 60 grams. I realize some people take their sourdough starter out of the fridge and immediately mix it with flour, water, and salt for sourdough, and that works well for them. However, I'm in no hurry, and it only takes 2 or 3 minutes to feed my starter each day, and my method always produces amazing oven spring for me. After a second night on the kitchen counter, you can see the activity of the sourdough starter as evidenced by all the bubbles. It's time to mix the dough. My 2-loaf recipe calls for 200 grams of sourdough starter, so I'll feed my 60 grams of starter in the jar, 100 grams of water, and 100 grams of mixing flour, which is approximately a 1:2:2 feeding ratio. Then I'll place the jar of 260 grams of sourdough starter in my proofing box until it doubles in volume. My 2-loaf recipe consists of 600 grams of water, 200 grams of sourdough starter, 900 grams of bread flour, and 20 grams of salt. I like to use fine sea salt. Bulk fermentation is the 4 to 6 hours between mixing the dough and shaping the dough. For the first 2 hours and at 30-minute intervals, I like to perform a series of stretch and folds as well as a few coil folds. Then I let the dough rest on the kitchen counter until it has increased in volume by 30 to 50%, which usually takes a couple of hours. I have a video on my YouTube channel devoted entirely to bulk fermentation titled Stretch and Fold or Coil Fold, which I encourage you to watch. In this video, I'll briefly demonstrate stretch and fold before moving on to pre-shaping and shaping the dough. During the first stretch and fold, not only are you building structure in the dough, but also you're feeling for any pockets of dough that didn't get hydrated with water during mixing. Continue to stretch and fold until all flour is hydrated. Also, it's helpful to begin with wet hands and continue to wet your hands as needed. After pre-shaping, then a 10-minute rest, and then final shaping, the dough is placed in a container and into the fridge overnight. Usually I use a Banneton basket, but really any bowl will work. In this video, I'll demonstrate using an 8-cup measuring bowl as well as a Banneton. It's the morning after the dough has spent the night in the fridge and time to bake. The dough is scored, then baked at 450 degrees for 30 minutes, then 400 degrees for 15 additional minutes. It's always exciting to remove the lid after 30 minutes of baking, and isn't that bread beautiful? Now I'll place just the bread by itself back into the oven for 15 additional minutes at 400 degrees. Oh my, another beautiful loaf. The bread is finished baking. I check the internal temperature to ensure it's over 200 degrees, followed by the 1-hour wait to let the bread cool. The sourdough starter has done its job magnificently after being in the fridge and nearly frozen only a few days ago. Now, the remaining 50 or 60 grams of sourdough starter will sit on the kitchen counter overnight until tomorrow morning, when once again it will be fed 100 grams of water and 100 grams of mixing flour, and then again it will perform its magic. Thanks again for watching, and make it a great day.